From the Jennings Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University, this is Trailblazer Weekly, starring Carrick Segmeller and Drayson Ball.
Welcome inside the Jennings Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University. It is time for another edition of Trailblazer Weekly. He's Drayson Ball, and I'm Carrick Segmeller. Another loaded show for you today as we get set to bring you the latest in Dixie State athletics. Later in the show, we'll talk with former Dixie State basketball star Mark Ogden in our Tracking Trailblazers segment. Excited to talk to him. He's in the G League right now and doing very well for himself as a pro. We've got a lot of basketball to talk about, Drayson. We're going to talk about this men's basketball team and, are they really who we thought they were? Were we fooled by their quick start in terms of how good this team is and how far they will go? We'll also talk some women's basketball. And are they a top 4 team? Can this women's basketball team, who is on a roll as of late, can they host an RMAC quarterfinal in the tournament a little bit later this season?
Getting into the meat of the schedule for these men's and women's basketball team. Also looking forward to talking to Mark Ogden Jr. He's had a heck of a journey. He went overseas for a couple years. He's been all over the world playing basketball. It's going to be fun to get a little bit of insight into what he's doing and how he transitioned back and now is playing for the G League. Going to be a good show.
Of course, as we go each day on through the calendar, we get one day closer to the springtime and that lovely time where baseball and softball get underway. And, of course, no more topical subject right now than baseball. I'm in a state of mourning as the Red Sox were allegedly caught cheating. They've let go Alex Cora, the manager, and I'm just not sure how I feel about that so close to spring training. But you got to do what you got to do, I guess, in that situation.
Crazy story. And it was, they came out and said it was going to be one of the most unprecedented punishments for the sport. And, I mean, it was crazy. And you can already see the ripple effects going through the entire league. The Astros, obviously, were decimated. A couple of firings. Alex Cora stepped down. Just crazy stuff
and
out of baseball.
His punishment hasn't even been handed down yet.
Right. He's still got a punishment, and he's already been fired from the Red Sox. And it's just crazy as we get closer and closer to baseball season.
Yes, that's what happens when you cheat on not one but 2 teams.
Exactly.
So
not great.
we'll have to see what goes on as we get a little closer to opening day for my Red Sox. But also, last thing we want to mention before we move to our Blazer beat, our countdown to Division I, 167 days.
Right around the corner.
It's coming. Right around the corner. It is time now for our Blazer beat, our headlines inside Trailblazer Weekly. We bring them to you each and every week to let you know quickly what's going on around campus. We'll start with men's basketball, give you the scores from over the weekend. The Trailblazers headed to Denver on Friday, lost to MSU Denver 60-57. That was a tough one. And then rebounded with a big win at Chadron State, 88-68. Moving on the basketball court, the women's basketball team gets a weekend sweep. 61-54 at MSU Denver. That was a close game down the stretch. They fought off the Roadrunners, won that game. And then at Chadron State, 80-73. Maddie Loftus caught fire in that game and hit some big threes down the stretch as the Trailblazers improved to 6-3 in league play. And then women's swimming headed on the road for a couple different dual meets. They went first to Western Colorado in Gunnison and defeated Western Colorado 120-86 in the duel there, and then moved on to Grand Junction, Colorado on Friday and Saturday for the Colorado Mesa Tri-Duel. Fell to Colorado School of Mines 187-147, and then also to Colorado Mesa the next day 185-132. But a lot of top finishes for the Trailblazers in that, a lot of first place finishes, a great showing for them. They'll have 2 home meets coming up this weekend and then next weekend before the RMAC championships. Last thing inside our Blazer beat, Trailblazer Athletics posting the record-breaking GPA for the 2019 fall semester. Dixie State University Athletic Department posted an NCAA-era record-high 3.2647 cumulative grade point GPA among its 15 varsity sports the 2019 fall semester. This past fall's cumulative GPA eclipsed the previous semester record of 3.1808 set last spring. So academics, along with athletics, getting better and better with each semester.
Always a good sign to see a high GPA, especially now that we're transitioning into Division I, and it's definitely going to matter at that point.
Absolutely. How about our Campus Store Player of the Week? Basketball, as it was last week, but this time the women's basketball program, and it is Maddie Loftus. There was no other choice. 26 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, a career high 31 points on Friday at Chadron State, including a career best, on Saturday at Chadron State, including a career best 6 3-pointers. She was on fire, and she sat most of the third quarter in foul trouble.
Yeah, 21 points on 7 of 13 shooting against MSU Denver, and then it was just fun to see her explode for 31 points on 10 of 17 shooting and 6 of 11 from 3 against Chadron State on Saturday. She was just on fire. She was just getting to the basket and doing a lot of things. It was not only 3-pointers. She was getting to the basket on a regular basis and just putting a lot of pressure on the defense. No doubt Campus Store Player of the Week for this week.
Should also mention that it's a double dip for her this week, as she was the RMAC Offensive Player of the Week as well for that great performance. Her second RMAC Offensive Player of the Week award of this season. Let's stay on the basketball court and dive in kind of the meat of this segment in the remaining time that we have in this first segment. We want to talk some men's basketball. Obviously, the men's basketball team raced to a 10-0 start and then now have lost 3 out of their last 4 matchups, which got us thinking, Drayson, and really asking the question, were we wrong about this Dixie State men's basketball team, what they're capable of, or were we fooled by the quick start and was it small sample size, an easier schedule up front? What was it? Were we fooled by the quick start? Is this men's basketball team by the end of the season really going to be who we think they are or who we thought they were a couple of weeks ago?
Well, it's hard to say, and there's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, when you get out to such a good start, there's got to be something behind it, right? There's got to be some substance. You just don't win 10 games in a row to start the season just by luck or just by happenstance. There has to be some substance behind you winning that many games at the first part of the season. Now, you've gotten into the conference schedule, and I think it would be foolish for either of us to expect them to just run the table through the conference, because this Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference is very, very good, very, very competitive. And right now, from first place to 7th place is separated by only 2 games in the win and loss column. So it's very, very packed at the top. And so I think, it's not completely out of the ordinary or completely unexpected for the Trailblazers to drop a game or 2 here and there. So were we wrong? Maybe. I think it may be just to be a little bit too early to tell. Another 2 or 3 weeks, obviously we'll be able to kind of see where they stand in the conference. Right now they're in first place, tied with first place, I guess I should say, with 2 other teams. But right now, one of the things that I'm noticing about this team is they are having troubles finishing games. Of their 12 wins this season, 7 of them have been by double digits or more. They've won a lot of kind of blowout games, if you will. They haven't had to play a lot of close 1 or 2 possession games to where they've been able to pull out a win there at the end in clutch time like that. So they haven't had a lot of experience trying to be able to close out good teams either on the road or at home, because they just haven't been in a whole lot of close games. And I think that was one of the things that plagued them against MSU Denver on the road on a tough environment. You were ahead by a wide margin there towards the end of that game. In fact, you were ahead by 9 with under 9 minutes to play at MSU Denver, and then over the next 6 minutes, MSU Denver goes on a 19-4 run, and now they're all of a sudden leading by a handful of points as well. So you just had the opportunity to close out that game on the road, and just because maybe you're inexperienced of not being able to do that very much this season, that may have been what caused them to lose that game. And so were we wrong? I think it's just a little bit too early to tell, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it would be too quick of us to, speaking of being foolish, it would be foolish of us to say that necessarily we were wrong. I like that you brought up the conference play, because once conference play starts, anything can happen. Games get more physical. Games are called a little bit more differently. It doesn't matter whether you're on the road or you're at home. And if you look at this Dixie State team, they're 12-3 overall. They're 7-2 in the RMAC. And before the season started, if I would have come up to you and said, hey, after 15 games, Dixie State will be 12-3 overall, they'll be 7-2 in the RMAC, tied for first place, you would have taken that in a heartbeat, right?
I would have said, sign me up right now.
Sign me up right now, just because we didn't know anything about this team. We didn't know who they would be. Then they rattle off 10 straight wins, and we're all thinking, oh, boy, we could maybe host the regionals. We could host the RMAC tournament. Well, hold up. We got to get through conference play, and you hate to lose a game. It's like Coach Judkins told us in the postgame after the Colorado School of Mines game. This game will be okay as long as we learn the lessons that we need to from it. That's not a bad loss. Colorado School of Mines is going to beat a lot of teams. Western Oregon is in the top 25. That was their first loss of the season. So really, if you want to go by bad losses, I think MSU Denver's that first bad loss of the season. It is on the road, so you have that, but it's a team that's 4-5 in the conference. They're out of the RMAC tournament right now, and so that's what, if you want to look at a resume killer, in terms of making an at-large berth to the NCAA tournament, that's the one that hurts. As we take a look at the RMAC standings, Dixie State tied at 7-2 with Colorado School of Mines and Black Hills State. UCCS is 6-3, as is Colorado Mesa. New Mexico Highlands 5-4, CSU Pueblo 5-4, and then Fort Lewis at 4-5. Those are the top 8. If you look at the RMAC standings and where the RMAC tournament would be right now, I believe if the RMAC tournament were to start right now, Dixie State would be the 2 seed because of the head-to-head matchup with Colorado School of Mines. Yeah, Colorado School of Mines, they only play them once, and they lost that game, so therefore Colorado School of Mines would own the tiebreaker. Like you said, I loved what you said. Just going to be a little bit more of a process in conference play to see really what this team is made of. Let's finish off this segment and jump right into our Rock Canyon Bank by the numbers feature. Just about a minute or so left into this segment, and this is your Rock Canyon Bank by the numbers feature. For Dixie State in their wins this season, I wanted to see really what was the difference between their wins and their losses, and for me it came down to the 3-point line. In their wins this season, Dixie State is shooting 38% from the 3-point line in their wins over this season, and their opponents are shooting 32% from the 3-point line in those losses they had to have against Dixie State. But in Dixie State's losses, they are only shooting 30% from the 3-point line compared to their opponent shooting 40% from the 3-point line. So that's really where the difference has been for this Trailblazers team. When they win, they shoot a great percentage from the 3-point line. When they lose, they shoot a bad percentage from the 3-point line, and vice versa with their opponents. They got to be better at not only making the shots when they get them and playing better perimeter defense on their opponents. Here's one more for you right before we go to break. In Dixie State's 3 losses, Frank Stain at Western Oregon, 5 points. Home to Colorado School of Mines, no points. On the road at MSU Denver, no points. Frank Stain is a freshman, and that's a lot of pressure to put on him. Dixie State needs him to score, and they need him to shoot more than 2 or 3 times a game. And it's freshman. You're going to go through ups and downs, but he's a big part of this offense, and he'll come around. He'll be better. Absolutely. Just one of the things you got to learn as a freshman, how to score and where to find your place on a brand new basketball team. We've got to take our first break of the show today. When we come back, we'll stay on the basketball court. We'll talk about the women's basketball team. The Trailblazers are on a roll. Could this women's basketball team play their way into the top 4 and host an RMAC tournament quarterfinal as the postseason gets closer and closer? We'll discuss right after this on Trailblazer Weekly.
For over a century, Dixie State University has been shaping the Trailblazers of tomorrow by providing a culture of active learning, active life. With a paradigm of real-world experience mixed with cutting-edge technologies and rich traditions, we provide one of the most affordable educations in the West, set against the most stunning backdrop on the planet.
All right, man, I need you to go deep.
All right, I'll catch this one, I promise. Post route, back of the end zone.
Got it, let's do it.
We may not always play good, but when we want to look good, we come to the Dixie State campus store.
Located on the 2nd floor of the Gardner Center. We'll see you there.
Radio Dixie 91.3, Young the Giant, something to believe in.
John, what song do you want to hear?
Next, Miss Calendris. You'll be on the SWAT team, the vice SWAT team.
That's a fantastic situation. I was going to talk to you last time.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that.
Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this. I need a one dance. And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
There is a place where rocks bleed and nature blushes on a battlefield green with envy, where dimples determine destiny and a tiny wooden T holds the outcome in the balance. There is a place where friends are opponents and opponents are friends, where the prize is elusive, the conquest is captivating, and the score isn't settled till the drinks are down. There is a place.
Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not as they seem.
Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating, funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife.
Lives of great men all remind us that our lives can be sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing over life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate. Still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait.
Today's show is brought to you by the Dixie State Campus Store, the official source for DSU Trailblazer clothing, providing students with textbooks, as well as educational, office, and art supplies. Located on the second floor of the Gardner Center, the Dixie State Campus Store, proud sponsor of Trailblazer Weekly.
Welcome back inside Studio A here at Dixie State University. It is Trailblazer Weekly. It's Wednesday. You know what that means. We continue to roll on the show discussing women's basketball in this segment. The Trailblazers 11-4 overall, 6-3 in RMAC play. Dixie State has won its last 3 games, and going back even further, 6 of its last 7 outings. And this Trailblazer team on a roll, a team that's really showing us their depth, a team that's showing us what they are capable of, and that has us asking the question, is this team capable of playing its way into the top 4 of the RMAC and hosting an RMAC tournament quarterfinal? It'd be the first time that the women's basketball team has ever hosted a conference tournament game. It's certainly tracking that way. Dixie State currently in the 5 spot, if you look at the standings right now, but a lot of basketball to be played, and this team is playing the game the right way and getting better each and every week, which is what Coach Gustin preaches, is get better as the team gets more familiar with one another. Drayson, can this team, I pose you the question, can this team play its way into the top 4 and host an RMAC quarterfinal?
Oh, I think they absolutely can, 100% in my opinion. I think they can, and I think they will ultimately by the end of the season. Right now, as you mentioned, won 3 in a row, and they've won 7 of their last 8 games. Currently right now, you said tied for 5th, but they're just 1 game back of being in 3rd place and hosting one of those home playoff matches. You just got to be in the top 4. Obviously, the Trailblazers would like to be a little bit higher than that, and they can get 3rd place, maybe even 2nd place. First place right now is going to be a little bit tough. Colorado Mesa is 9-0 right now in conference, so it's going to be tough to reach that plateau. But they certainly can get to at least 2 or 3, if not 4, by the end of the season. And that's really what you're playing for, is to give yourself a chance to play on your home field or on your home court in the postseason. However, not sure that home court advantage has been that great for Dixie State so far this season. If you look back, all 3 of their home losses, or all 3 of their conference losses, have come at home. UCCS and Westminster, and then, of course, their loss against South Dakota Mines. And so those are the 3 losses you have at home in conference. And so you've won all your road games, but you've lost your home games. And so it's kind of an interesting dynamic for this team that you've lost those 3 games at home. But yeah, I think they definitely can get into that top 4 spot. They've just got to continue to play that they've been playing right now. Obviously, with Maddie Loftus, the last couple of games that she's played has been absolutely phenomenal. You see, some B-roll here of the women's basketball team right now. The thing that's for me that's got to be important is Allie Frank. She was kind of absent on that trip this last weekend. Only had 2 points against MSU Denver, and then 9 points against Chadron State. I said earlier in the season, I felt like she could lead the RMAC in scoring. I felt like that at the time. Probably out of reach at this point in the season after a couple of lackluster performances, but she can lead this team in scoring, and she can definitely put up a lot of points if she needs to. She had 27 points 2 weeks ago as a career high. If her and Maddie Loftus can continue to do what they do, then I think this team, the sky's the limit for this women's basketball team.
Well, I like that you mentioned that too, and we talk about Maddie Loftus, and we'll see some clips of her here in just a minute or two. But you and I were actually talking yesterday after we played some pickup basketball. We talk about the Jazz, as we often do, and the Utah Jazz, that is, and disagree sometimes on lineup moves. And you were telling me that this women's basketball team, or this Utah Jazz team, is one that on any given night, it can be Donovan Mitchell one night, it can be Joe Ingles one night, it can be Bojan Bogdanovic one night, it can be Rudy Gobert one night. There's one of 5 or 6 guys that can lead the team. This women's basketball team, this Dixie State women's basketball team, is the same way. I mean, never in a million years at the start of the season did I think that you could go on the road and Allie Franks would score only 2 points Friday night and 7 points Saturday night, and Dixie State would win both games. But then here comes Maddie Loftus, as she did earlier in the season as well, when she picked up some slack. 21 points Friday night, 31 points Saturday night. That's a career high for her, and she made 6 3-pointers. And we have that B-roll here. We can look at all 6 of those 3-pointers from Maddie Loftus as she was on fire. And we talked about it. She was our Campus Store Player of the Week. She is someone that's an X factor for me because everyone knows Allie Franks. Everybody keys in on her, and she's feeling the pressure of the double teams night in and night out. Last year, Maddie was a little bit more inconsistent with her shooting. This year, she has scored in double digits 5 or 6 or 7 times, and she's contributing along the scoring front a lot more than just a game or two here and there. She is settled in. She is a senior leader, and for me, she is the X factor to this team's success offensively because this team relies on three-point shooting. And when she's going to go out and shoot the ball the way she did on this trip, then it is going to be a huge help for this team. Interestingly enough, through her 2-year career here at Dixie State now, some of her best shooting performances have been on the road. You mentioned the way they've played on the road. It's just kind of funny the way that's worked out. But Maddie Loftus, for me, is a big X factor for this Dixie State women's basketball team and their ability to succeed in getting into the top 4 and hosting an RMAC quarterfinal.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, she has to play well. And it's not just the three-pointer I mentioned earlier. She's added a dynamic to her game about being able to get to the basket and move within the defense and not just rely on the three-pointer to get her points. I'm going to drop a little bit of knowledge on you here, Carrick. I did a little research.
Teach me. Class is in session.
I did a little research before the show, obviously. Are you familiar with Lawler's Law?
Lawler's Law. Is that like the first team 100?
Yeah, you're on the right track. So in the NBA, there was a guy named Ralph Lawler. For those of you who don't know, a guy named Ralph Lawler, who was the voice of the LA Clippers for about 41 years, came up with a theory that says the first team to score 100 points, this is, of course, in the NBA.
Yeah, in the NBA.
The first team to score 100 points wins the game most of the time. And since the 96-97 season, that theory has held true in 93% of the cases. So 93% of the time, if your team scores 100 points first, you win the game. I've come up with my own, you could call it Lawler's Law or call it Drayson's Law. I don't know, but for this women's basketball team, if they reach 70 points first, they win the game. In fact, they are 9-0 when they score 70 points first. If they do not score 70 points or if they score it second, they're only 1-4. So that's going to be the key for me going forward, and maybe this is just my own little made-up stat here that doesn't mean anything, but it's maybe just a curious circumstance that has happened. But when this women's basketball team scores 70 points or more, they win 100% of the time so far this season. So if they're putting up points, they have a defense that's good enough to be able to make 70 points win the game for them.
Let's take a quick – that's good stuff, by the way. Great stuff. I have Twitter to thank for me knowing what Lawler's Law is. So thank you, Twitter. There's so much good stuff out on that Twitter machine. Right right quick, before we run to break, let's take a look at the women's basketball RMAC standings and just take a look at that top 8. Colorado Mesa, like you mentioned, is 9-0, a game ahead of Westminster at 8-1. Fort Lewis and Western Colorado are 7-2. Then you've got Dixie State and Black Hills State at 6-3. Colorado School of Mines and Colorado Christian at 5-4. So those would be your top 8 at this moment. Again, Dixie State would be the 5 seed playing Western Colorado. They've yet to play Western, so we'll see what happens in a couple weeks when those two teams match up. Of course, both men's and women's basketball will be in the Burns Arena this weekend at 5:30 and 7:30 on Friday and Saturday. Speaking of basketball, I mean, it's that time of year. That's really all we have to talk about right now is basketball. We're going to go take a break, but when we come back, one of my favorite segments of the show, it's Tracking Trailblazers, where we go back and we chat with a former player or a coach who's still playing and excelling at the next level. We bring back former Dixie State men's basketball star Mark Ogden. He's waiting on the line. He will join us next. He's a member of the College Park Skyhawks. He's played his way into the NBA G League, and he is making a name for himself. We'll take a break and come back with Tracking Trailblazers and Mark Ogden.
You know, we may have started out small, but we were great. Families and fans rallied behind their team. The community cared, and everyone showed up to cheer. Now, we're bigger than ever. Dixie State is going to Division I.
Here we go in transition, and he throws it down with one hand. Catch me!
But at the end of the day, it's the community and fans that make us great. Whether you give $5 or $1,000, every dollar, every seat in the stands, every one of you can help blaze our trail to Division I athletics, because this is our team.
Give your town a reason to celebrate, because every Goodwill item you bring home brings job training and more to your community. Goodwill, bring good home.
Honorary Forest Ranger Betty White here, lending a hand to my dear friend Smokey Bear, because for 75 years, he's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But there's a lot more to say. Like, if you park your car on tall, dry grass, the hot exhaust pipe can start a wildfire. So keep the animals safe, especially the cute shirtless one. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
When you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique.
And your mother.
They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love.
Give your town a reason to celebrate, because every Goodwill item you bring home brings job training and more to your community. Goodwill, bring good home.
Let's go. Take the ball out there.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
From former coaches to players, where are they now? It's time for Tracking Trailblazers.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly on this Wednesday afternoon. It is time for our Tracking Trailblazers segment. You know it. You love it. We love it. It's one of my favorite segments of the show where we bring back a former player or coach who is still competing and excelling at the next level. And, of course, our guest today we welcome to the show is former Dixie State men's basketball player Mark Ogden. I should say former star here at Dixie State and doing very well for himself. Had a great international career over the last few years and is in the NBA G League this year, playing with the College Park Skyhawks, the G League affiliate of the Atlanta Hawks. We are excited to have him on the show today. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Carrick. It's good to be in touch again and have a nice chat with you. I enjoy these.
Absolutely. We were just talking before we started this interview how, we had you on what was then the Storm Stack Up a few years ago, and it was a great interview, and was recalling our game of horse that we played in the Burns Arena after, and I think you won that game if I recall, but we'll give you that one. But again, thanks so much. We're excited to have you on the show today, and really just wanted to dive into this thing and discuss your journey, your professional basketball journey. We knew when you were here at Dixie State that you were certainly capable of playing at the next level. We knew that was a goal, and you've done very well for yourself. For those of you that haven't, followed each stop that you've made, why don't you take us just through your journey? Where have you been, and what are some of the things you've learned along the way since playing at Dixie State?
No, yeah, of course. It's been quite the journey, and looking back at it now, it's been a 3 to 4 year journey to lead up to where I'm at now, and it's crazy how time has been flying, and at the same time how the timeline of events led up to now. Because after I left Dixie State, I had a plan to make it to the G League, whether it was in 2 years or in 3 years. And so far, like I said, I've been successful in getting to where I'm at now, and I can't be more than happy to be here, especially being in the States. Like my first year, after I finished at Dixie State, I was in the country of Luxembourg, small country in Western Europe, bordered by Germany, Belgium, and France. I was there from 2016 to 2017, finished the full season in the National 2 level, which is the second division of the country. But halfway through the season, we got promoted from the second division to the first division of the country. And the last 2 seasons from 2017 throughout to 2019, 19, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I was in the country of Georgia. So it's coincidental how I'm in the state of Georgia now. In the last 2 years, or last 2 seasons, I played in the country of Georgia. My first season there, I made it all the way halfway through the season. So from September to January 1st, I was made it through halfway through the season. It's going great. I was averaging good numbers, a double-double, still successfully averaging a double-double. I broke my foot on December 30th, 2017. So that was a bit of adversity I had to go through because I was out for at least 3 to 4 months off my feet. And I took the choice of staying there instead of going home after the season. The hardest part of that season was just adversity. Being in a different country, going through physical therapy in a rehabilitation center, which is actually top of the line and the best physical therapist I had in the country. So, like I said, the club took real care of me with that, helped me out off the court as well. But being in that rehab center was very different than being in the rehab center in the United States because of the language barrier. So pretty much the only American in there and the only guy who was speaking fluent English next to my physical therapist coach. So, like I said, it was a bit tough doing that for the next 6 to 8 weeks. But I got through it. Fast forward, end of the season, 16 points a game, 10 rebounds a game, forward of the year accolades, all-star MVP, all-star dunk contest, first all-team Georgian honors. So I've been working my butt off from that previous season to this season, so I just can't be more than happy now to be where I'm at, to be honest. I've learned so much these past 3 seasons, and one thing I could really benefit from Dixie State going there for 2 years is being a California kid, going to a university that offered me a full scholarship and a free education, and as well a different type of cultural living. It really is. It's a beautiful experience. It really is. Beauty and the struggle.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's quite the journey there. And it sounds like you're on a roll, too, to hear all about that and your journey from Dixie State into the G League. Of course, this is Mark Ogden joining us in our Tracking Trailblazers segment. I wanted to ask you just about your time at Dixie State and what you mentioned some of it, but what you learned here at Dixie State. You got to play under a great college coach and Coach Judkins and adapt to a different culture here in St. George and different teammates. What were some of your biggest lessons and biggest takeaways that you learned from your 2 years here at Dixie State?
My 2 years here at Dixie State was, say the biggest weapon I learned is just to be me, just be you. And at the same time, I just benefited from each one of my teammates, believe it or not, leading all the way to that, playing alongside Zach Robbins, know how to play high and low basketball with him, how to crash the glass, and just being very utilize your post moves and just off the court, just being a great student. I could just say I just learned how to play with each one of my teammates and just be a good player, good person, honestly.
And you certainly proved it here your time at Dixie State, chatting with here Mark Ogden Jr., formerly of the Dixie State Trailblazers, a star here on campus, and now currently a member of the College Park Skyhawks of the Atlanta Hawks organization. 13 points and 10 rebounds a game here at Dixie State, average a double-double in your time here. You're playing well there for the Skyhawks, averaging about 5 points a game and 3 and 4 assists per game. You had a great game a couple months ago against Fort Wayne, 19 points on 8 of 11 shooting, 5 rebounds. We've been having a good time kind of following your career from afar. Just talk a little bit about what you've learned playing in the G League. Obviously, you've had a ton of experience overseas. What's maybe one surprise of playing in the G League that maybe you didn't expect? Maybe something more, not necessarily towards the game itself, but maybe something behind the scenes. Obviously, pro basketball is a lot different than college basketball in the sense that it's a business. What's one thing that's maybe surprised you about the business that is playing in the G League?
Just how you said it, it's a business, how it works. Everyone's working to try to get a two-way contract or just to get an NBA call-up, because that's just a life-changing thing, and it's just something everyone's working for. But not to be wrong, but the main thing I think that's really changed my mindset about the G League route and just the G League experience, you gotta be coachable, disciplined, and your IQ level really has to be up. Because the fact, like I said, I know in college everybody was the guy, whoever they were. Like, I'm scoring all the time, playing defense, doing all this and that. The higher you go at the next level, like you're gonna have to get used to being a role player. Everyone has a role on this team. Like we have 2 guys who are 2 shooters on the team. We have one or 2 guys who's required to score and play defense. We have another guy who just has to facilitate the ball and make sure those guys get those shots up and make sure everyone, the guys on the floor, score. And like I said, my job, I've embraced it. At the same time, I'm getting used to it, and just how Kawhi said, the board man gets paid. Literally, like I said, I know what I can do offensively. Like you mentioned, my game against Fort Wayne. I scored 19 points. Of course, I would love to consistently do that, but like I said, here and there, your time will come. Just can't force shots up. You got to make sure you take the right shots, and you just got to be versatile with your game. You have to develop a consistent 3-point shot, great IQ, and just big confidence. But you really have to be comfortable and understand your role on the team. So they keep saying it's a grind, but it's the beauty and the struggle. It's working.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Good stuff, and what you're learning in the G League, and what life is like in the G League. Mark, one other thing about playing in the G League in the United States, and you're traveling around the country playing. I'm sure you've had opportunity to play in front of friends and family more so than when you were overseas. Has that been the case? And if so, how nice has that been to be able to know that you've got some supporters up in the stands watching you?
Oh man, it's beautiful. Like I said, like it's been 3-4 years since I had support like that. I haven't had support at all, physical support overseas for someone being in the crowd supporting me as far as family goes. So my first game this season against the Erie Bayhawks, we played at Erie, and my grandfather, my dad's dad, he's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so Erie's only about 2 hours away. And unfortunately, my grandmother passed early of April 2019. But like I said, he was there. I was so glad he was there, able to come support me, because my grandmother, when I was overseas, I told her I wanted it so bad. She just told me, keep working. Like, I know you'll be there. And she was like, I'll be there either in spirit or I'll be there in person. And I know she was there in spirit, supporting me that first game. And my grandfather I was so happy to see him make it, because he's never been to one of my basketball games. So being as a professional athlete and in the States, he's able to watch me play along with my few cousins and my father. But it was really nice to have that support. And like I said, I've been having all my family and close friends, and even a couple like people from hometowns and even of course the people of Dixie State, and just like I said, nationwide, I have a lot of support, and everyone has read my story and know about it. And I get a lot of people saying like, it's really impressive what I've done. I'm glad I could be an influence and inspiration to other people. But family means everything, man. It really does.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Chatting with Mark Ogden Jr., former star of the Dixie State Trailblazers and a current member of the College Park Skyhawks of the Atlanta Hawks organization in the NBA G League. Mark, just about one minute left, maybe only 30 seconds left. Just wanted to get one quick answer from you. Obviously, you probably heard the news. The Trailblazers are transitioning into Division I coming this next summer. Just wanted to get you maybe a quick reaction, 30 seconds, reaction to the Trailblazers moving to Division I.
About time.
About time.
But I'm very jealous, though, of the fact that moving to Division I, when I'm not attending, of course, but I have been supporting them from afar. I'm always a proud alumni, and I'm keeping up with them. And they've been doing pretty great this season. Of course, it's going to be a battle next decade, because we had to establish and put a name out for ourselves. But I'm really proud to see that we moved from junior college era to Division II era, now Division I. So it's really nice to hear that.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, Mark, and we know that you and as well as many of your teammates and former players throughout this program are those who have laid the foundation to get to Division I, and we certainly appreciate that. And now renewed rivalries with Grand Canyon and with California Baptist, right back in the same conference in the WAC. So, Mark, we've run out of time here on the segment, but we appreciate so much you taking our phone call, and we've just enjoyed catching up with you, learn about your journey and your time in the G League. And like Drayson noted during the interview, we're following closely your career, and we wish you the best of luck and all the success in the world, and we'll continue to follow you closely.
Man, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate that, Carrick. It was good catching up. And like I said, you won. I owe you another round of fourth. So
that's right. Next time you're here in St. George, we got a rematch scheduled inside the Burns. So I won't forget it.
I'll be more happy to be in the Burns, get on the floor again. But thank you again for having me.
Thanks, Mark. We appreciate it.
No problem.
That is Mark Ogden, former star of the Dixie State Trailblazers, and man, what a journey, what a fantastic interview that was. And he's been, ups and downs, all of it, and now he's in the G League, and just one step away from that ultimate goal in the NBA. And I think there's anybody that can accomplish it, it's Mark Ogden. He's overcome adversity. He's been through lots of different things, and he's proven a lot of people wrong, and he's right there and ready to take that next step.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I love what he said. He said, you always have to be working. I love that mindset of a player that's in the G League that's not content with where they're at. They always want to improve and always want to get better. It's a good formula to try to get to the league.
100%. Absolutely. We got to take our final break. When we come back, we look ahead at our scouting report. Dixie State basketball team is taking on Colorado Christian and Regis inside the Burns Arena this weekend. We'll break down what to expect and give you some keys for victory for both teams in those games. That's coming up right after this on Trailblazer Weekly.
Where do you find the titans of classical music in St. George? Classical music on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM. Where do you find the legends of jazz? Evenings on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM.
Hey guys, how are you today? Good. I'm here to talk about how with technology you can make amazing worlds. Come with me. My team and I groomed the Halo world to life. Is that you? That is me. I wasn't a math genius, and I knew nothing about coding. But you guys do. You guys have the power to change things. I want your job. I want you to have my job.
This graph is script.
Pretty close.
Artemisia is all the sage brushes, but there's your needle and thread. Which one is this?
Sodium carbonate.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, good. You played before, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's all state, high school.
Good, let's run some routes. Give me a post route.
All right, let's do it.
We may not always play good, but when we want to look good, we come to the Dixie State Campus Store.
Located on the second floor of the Gardner Center. We'll see you there.
Today's show is brought to you by Rock Canyon Bank, serving Utah businesses and agriculture for over 25 years, with locations in Pleasant Grove, Orem, Provo, Spanish Fork, Fillmore, and at 94 East Tabernacle, right here in St. George. Rock Canyon Bank, back to banking. Member FDIC.
It's time to wrap up the show here on Trailblazer Weekly, the final segment of the show. Time flies when you are having fun. A big shout out to all of our sponsors, the Campus Store, to Rock Canyon Bank. Also big shout out and a big thank you to Mark Ogden for hopping on the line with us. And, busy schedule there in the G League. So it was, tough to find a time that worked for everybody, but we were able to squeeze that in there. And a big shout out to him. We appreciate him. And it was fun watching him in a Trailblazer uniform. I guess it was a Red Storm uniform at the time, but we'll say Trailblazer uniform. It was fun following his career overseas, and it is fun being able to see those highlights from the G League and know that, hey, I can turn the TV on and watch him play now. And the way he's moving up and getting better, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the big league one of these days. So big thanks to him, and we appreciate everyone that's been involved in today's show as we wrap things up. As we wrap it up, as usual, we just want to take a look ahead and kind of preview what is on the docket these last 7 or 8 minutes of the show. And you've got men's and women's basketball and then women's swimming at home as well. We'll touch on each briefly. Let's just start with women's basketball. We mentioned it's kind of our scouting report. We'll give you some keys to the game. And as you look at these two teams that women's basketball is playing this weekend, you've got Colorado Christian is in on Friday. They're 5-4 in the conference, no pushover. Regis is 4-5. Both of these games, on paper you have a tendency to look, they're below us in the standings. It should be easy games. They're going to both be tough games. These are both teams that can beat anyone on any given night, and Dixie State will have to bring its A game. And that's why I look at the keys, and I think it might be less about what the opponent's doing and more about Dixie State playing its game and being able to execute offensively and then get some stops defensively, and then things like getting Allie Franks back involved in the offense and getting her some points. And she's kind of like Frank Stain. When she scores early, it's going to be a good night. When she misses her first couple attempts, you think, I wonder if she can bounce back from that. But she's approaching the 1,000-point club. If she can go off and have a big weekend this weekend, she could break into that 1,000-point club at home, which would be a fantastic place to be able to do it. But as I look at this game, I think it's more about what Dixie State does in focusing kind of on itself rather than necessarily Colorado Christian or Regis playing your game and being focused on that.
Yeah, and you said it, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about Allie Frank. She has to be the leader of this team. I mean, we know that she's been leading the team in scoring up to this point in the season, and she's had a couple of bad games. And I don't want it to sound like we're selling all of our stock on Allie Franks, because we know
not at all.
We know how important she is and has to be for this team if they're going to want to be successful in the postseason. Obviously, you're bringing in a couple of tough teams, Colorado Christian and Regis, who are right there, kind of in the middle of the standings there in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. And in reality, it's so packed in that top 6 or 7 or even eight spots in the RMAC. It's so packed there that if you slip up and lose even 1 or 2 games, you go from being a playoff team to being on the outside looking in at that point. And I mentioned it earlier in the show. The adage is supposed to be home court advantage, and the Trailblazers need to be able to make that an advantage this season. They've been undefeated in conference play on the road. They have not lost a road conference game this season, but they've lost 3 conference games at home, which I know if you ask any one of the players, if you ask head coach J.D. Gustin, that's really disappointing for them, because if you consider home court advantage, you should be undefeated right now, and you could be vying for the top spot in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. But I'm going to be really interested to see how Allie Franks is going to respond and lead this team. If she can continue to put in the points that she's been able to show at points of this season, if Maddie Loftus can continue her soaring stretch that she's had in the last couple of games. Obviously, London Pavlica will give you the same numbers just about every single night. And you got a lot of other contributors, Deshka Olsen, Ashley Greenwood, a lot of other players that can contribute and put up big games, and it's going to be fun to see how they respond coming back home after a tough two-game road trip.
Well, if you look at kind of Allie Franks and her season, throughout she had a lull earlier in the season. She went where she only scored 6 points against who was that? Westminster, South Dakota Mines, and then she bounced back with 23 and 10. Then she only scored 9 points, and then she answered with 22. She had a game where she only scored 2 points, and then she answered with her career high 27 points. So record would show here that after a lull, she's due for a big breakout, couple of performances this weekend. And I don't know if I'd even call them bad games. I think I'd call them tough games. Go out on the road. She's being keyed on, and she's a senior. She'll bounce back from that. Also, last thing about women's basketball that I'll say, you mentioned the standings, and right now only 2 games separate the 8 seed and the 2 seed. So, the 3 seed, I should say. 2 games separate the 8 seed and the 3 seed. So like you said, it's a matter of just games. If you slip up in one or two games along the way, you can find yourself on the outside looking in. So Dixie State will try to stay on the inside track there. How about moving over to the men's side, as they will also host Colorado Christian and Regis this weekend. And as we take a look at the RMAC standings, and Dixie State, of course, tied for first still at 7-2 overall. And then you look down the standings. Regis is 4-5 overall. That's the Saturday team. Colorado Christian is 1-8 in the conference, dead last in the conference. But I think the last thing that this Dixie State team can do right now is afford to look ahead or look past anyone. I think they've learned that maybe with an MSU Denver on the road. They've dropped a couple of games in conference now, so now your leeway, when you're undefeated in conference, you know you've got some leeway. You've got a game or two that you can drop along the way, if you will still want to vie and compete for the conference title and be able to host that conference tournament. Now that leeway, that wiggle room is gone. So you've got to take care of business at home and against teams that are lower than you in the standings.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it's a classic trap game against Colorado Christian. They're going to come in on Friday. They're the 1-8 team in conference. They just have the one win overall in the season. And then you bring in Regis, who's 4-5 in conference, and right there, kind of in the middle of the pack as well. You can't look ahead to Regis and say we got to win that game against Regis, the 1-8 team. We're going to easily roll over them. That's a classic trap game, if you ask me. You have to be able to stay focused and take it one game at a time. And the standings on this one, and we've talked about it a lot, they're so tight in the RMAC. There's not a whole lot of separation. Right now, Dixie State's tied for first, like you mentioned. If you lose one game, you could drop to 5 in one game. If you lose 2 games, you could drop to 7 and are on bordering on losing out or being outside of the top 8 teams that are going to make the RMAC tournament. So if you slip up even 1 or 2 games here and there, if everyone else takes care of business that are right there next to you in the standings, you're going to be maybe on the outside looking in, and it's only going to be 2 games.
So the post play, Hunter Schofield continues to be important for this Dixie State men's basketball team. Cameron Chatwin has played well as of late, and Jared Green has been fantastic in the post and in his post play as well. And I got to mention the name of Jacob Nichols. He's been one that can come in and play about any position for you, and he's been a real hustle guy, him and his mustache that he likes to sport. So this Dixie State men's basketball team, both teams at home this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Women's game 5:30 tip, men's game 7:30 tip. So be sure to join us in the Burns Arena for those contests. Last thing happening on campus this weekend, and it's women's swimming, and we haven't been able to say that, if really at all, over the last few years. There's been one home meet against Biola in November, and that was right after the Human Performance Center opened up. And then they've been on the road in Grand Junction a couple of different times. They were in San Diego. They were in Gunnison, Colorado. And now, with little less than a month before the RMAC Championships, the women's swimming team able to come home and host Northern Arizona on Saturday. Then next week they'll host Loyola Marymount, and it's 2 tough teams. I mean, Northern Arizona is a consistently very good women's swimming team, and then Loyola Marymount also a D1. And really the reasons are, let's get some tough competition before the RMAC Championships. It's time to go out and find little things that we need to tweak and to improve on before the RMAC Championships, but also it's an opportunity to really see where we're at and see how we match up with these teams that we'll be competing with in the future at the Division I level, and then be able to take those things out and take them to recruiting and be able to build your team around what you need to do in those games. So that's what's coming up this weekend, and that will do it for today's show. Again, a big thanks to Mark Ogden for hopping on the show, and a big thanks to the entire CEC TV crew and Radio Dixie 91.3 FM. For Drayson Ball, I'm Carrick Segmiller. We'll catch you next week. Go Trailblazers.